Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Sword Art Online Alicization anime review. This one's going to be for episode 33, which is called Sword and Fist, and I thought this was a really good episode. This is one of the moments I've been waiting for, having read the light novels, of course. It was the introduction of Sheita here. So Sheita, Integrity Knight number 12, otherwise known as Sheita the Silent. And they'd shown her before, and you weren't really clear, like, who is she? No one's really mentioning her. So it was interesting to see her step up at this moment that they're kind of figuring out, okay, what do we do here? The Pugilists and the Dark Knights are coming in. Who do we get to fight them? And she decides to speak up. And the idea is that is pretty much one of the first time that they've heard her speak. Like the fact that Bercoli, the leader of the Integrity Knights, who's known her for like 100 years or whatever he said, is shocked at her speaking, kind of tells you exactly what's going on here. So I like that idea. Like, she's not the most complicated character with regards to like, oh, here's a little bit of backstory on her, and it's basically just, you're all about slashing, you have this sort of murderous intent that you just want to cut everything that you see. Your divine object will be a weapon that allows you to do that, that will just cut through anything, based on this kind of lily flower that you found. And then, like, when she starts fighting, of course, you get across the idea, like, with what Alice and Bercoli say about her, is that, like, there's no actual sort of murderous intent. Like, she's very emotionless when she does all of this. It's just the way she fights is all about cutting, and it seems like brutal what she's doing. Like, the way she cuts the first girl's kind of arm in half is really, really brutal, but then it's utterly expressionless from her, even though it's like this devastating injury. And that's just the way she does things. And it was a good fight because, like the episode is called Sword and Fist, it is the Integrity Knight who is so focused on the idea of the blade and cutting things, versus the Dark Territory forces that are most focused on muscles, building up their muscles to the point where they can deflect sword blows, and so they immediately encounter the exact counter of an Integrity Knight for them, of someone who can cut through them at will. And this is where we get the setup for the leader of the Pugilists in Iskan here, who is the first one to finally be able to like block one of her strikes. And it just starts this very interesting dynamic between these two characters that kind of continues a little bit in the light novels as it goes on, between Sheita and Iskan. And you see both of them begin to sort of change a little bit from their interaction with each other, of, you know, him kind of looking down on the Integrity Knights because, you know, they wear armor, they use swords, and there's a little bit on his side of like, oh, it's just a woman and she's really kind of like thin and stuff, like she doesn't even have muscle like the pugilist women and stuff like that. What's going on here? And so they both just sort of end up kind of impressing each other. And on Sheita's side, that's actually a very interesting thing, because you do get the idea that she is sort of emotionless. She doesn't speak a lot. So the idea that she's actually getting into a fight like this to the point where she grins towards the end of the fight is a pretty big thing. And in the light novel, they definitely tease the idea of a little bit of sort of chemistry building between these two characters, a little bit of kind of romantic tension beginning to build, and that's going to be fun to see them come back to it here. But it was a really well done fight. Like, the animation of her just like cutting through the pugilists, and Iskan kind of stepping up to the plate, how they did his attacks of, you know, he charges up his punches so it looks like they're on fire and stuff like that, and then she's not even using like the special abilities of her sword, and like Iskan basically says, you're not even going all out, you're just kind of playing with us, aren't you? And she gets serious, but like ultimately you know that there are still sort of two abilities that she has that she hasn't even used yet. She's just going pure sword technique on them, and is, you know, doing as much as she's doing, like holding off a whole section of the Dark Territory army, is super impressive on her part. And it makes sense. Like, she's one of the early-ish Integrity Knights. Of course, like, we only have, like, 31, 32, and she's the 12th. And the fact that Bercoli says that, he's known her for 100 years, so she's been an Integrity Knight for a long time. So it makes sense how she'd be that skilled to be able to hold off that many at once. But yeah, I think they just did the fight really well, of just his attacks when he hits her, sort of blowing her armor apart, and kind of damaging her bones and stuff like that. And then she is cutting him. She's not like cutting off limbs and stuff like that like she was with everyone else, but the cuts are beginning to sort of pile up. She cuts his arms, like the toughest part of his body. She cuts his legs, and it's just this interesting moment of this sort of unexpected dynamic on the battlefield that ends up happening here, from the Shada, the character you almost least expected, and then like the two characters on either side that you you sort of expect to be the most sort of one note. The person only focused on punching, the person only focused on slashing, cutting, and they end up having a really interesting dynamic. Like, I'm not going to say it's like the greatest, character dynamic I've ever seen, but I thought it was very fun throughout the episode to see this get focused on, and as effectively like 90% of the episode be the sort of Sheta Iskon focus. It was definitely worth it, because we'll come back to it again, because let's keep in mind we're building up the Dark Territory generals, and which you have to keep a count in the back of your head about which are the Dark Territory generals that they've sort of humanized to a degree, which are the ones that are just out and out villains versus which are the ones who are characters, and you can get behind the idea of they don't agree with what is going on with what Vecta's been ordering them basically to do. And we're already beginning to see that here. We had Shasta at the start, we have Lilipin from the orcs, they're doing that with him, and here we see the leader of the Pugilists is kind of the same way. So it's going to be fun to come back to them for sure, because they didn't, like, of all of the kind of Dark Territory forces, the Pugilists, they're just all about battle, but otherwise they seem fairly normal. They're not doing anything particularly villainous outside of the fact that they're on the villain side of things. But yeah, they devoted a lot of the episode to Sheta, which I did appreciate. And then the rest of the episode was basically focused on setting up the idea that Vizago, obviously the Dark Knight, of course, basically second in command of the Dark Territory forces under Vecta, he decides to go out and get involved in the action. And we see kind of Renly, they're setting up their sort of attack here. He sort of goes around into the forest and begins to take people out, and kind of sneaks around the back to the supply forces, and you see he's about to attack Ronier here, and I like that they gave Ronier this moment of actually not getting caught off guard by Vizago. That she does a really cool move with her sword, where she just kind of swings it around reverse grip and then turns around to kind of keep the blade pointed at him, and then calls out for help, circles around so she's on the same side as her forces, and they think they have the advantage because it's like 20 on 1. He then reveals that he has some of his forces with him, and it seems like everything's going to go really bad. And then we do get a little bit of a kind of action sequence here of Ronier blocking a couple of Vizago's blows before he shows that he does have the advantage. I like that. We haven't really got to see Ronier or TS fight, so it was nice to know that, like, oh, she can like hold her own a little bit. That like Vizago is meant to be seen as like being kind of roughly that Kirito Asuna level of like being that familiar with VR and games and stuff like that, and having the training in the real world, that he's meant to be viewed as being right up there. So it's not really a super negative that Ronier kind of loses this kind of minor duel here to Vizago, but it again sets up the moment of like they're behind here. They've been sort of outflanked in this moment. They decide that like, okay, Alice, Renly, you guys go back and sort out the supply unit, and we'll see what happens. And this is when they decide to finally, after a bunch of episodes teasing it, this is when they're bringing Asuna in. So, great moment of like Vizago sort of hovering over Ranier, about to sort of finish the job, and she just looks up into the sky and sees, from her perspective as a person from the underworld, this goddess basically glowing pure white, and she says Stacia. So this confirms to us here that the account that Asuna logged in under is a god account, Stacia, because of course we know that there are 3 goddesses in the underworld, and Stacia is one of them. Stacia is the main god that we've actually had focused on. So I love the how they did this, of just keeping her sort of like basked in light, so you can't really see her features. You just see the sort of outline of what's going on. You can definitely look through it and see some of the details and maybe figure it out, but amazing sequence, her hovering in the sky. She sort of creates this sort of aurora borealis sort of effect in the sky, and then underneath that effect the ground just opens up, the terrain just forms into a ravine, and the Dark Territory forces fall in. She creates this gap on the battlefield, that basically brings this battle to an end, because she's created like impassable terrain. She's separated the 2 armies, and then specifically targets Vizago, and he just falls straight down the hole. And as he's falling, he realizes that that's Asuna, and Knights of the Blood Oath. He's very still in SAO basically of Vizago. So that was really, really cool to see, that being the kind of realization of just like lightning flash, and you figure it out, because we've been waiting for her to arrive, and interesting that Vizago kind of is the one to reveal it. I don't think they've fully revealed the whole thing with Vizago yet, but this basically is the confirmation here that, oh, Vizago's from SAO. I wonder who he is. I don't want to say it right now in case it is a spoiler, because I forget if they have or have not revealed it yet. But he's going to be revealed to be a very, very important character that we've sort of been waiting to get some focus on in the main story. But here he is, like falling into a ravine. It's straight down. He's gone basically. So we'll see what happens if they cut out to the real world to show what happens next. But really cool arrival of Asuna. Fantastic moment of, she's come in to turn the tides of the battle. She has a goddess account as like a sort of counterpoint to the fact that like Vecta has come in as like a dark kind of god emperor account. Asuna's come in with this one. And we'll see what happens, because she's right there next to like Bercoli. Alice is on her way and stuff like that. So we're going to go straight into her actually getting to interact with a lot of the Underworldians, and we're going to see how they view her, because they're going to see her as like a god, but she's also going to have to reveal that like she knows Kirito and she's from the outside world. And this is going to be the clearest example to all these characters that they are artificial sort of constructs, living beings, basically, because they are actual true Fluctlights. But this will be the biggest example to all of them that they do live in a game, that one of their gods is just an account that pretty much anyone can log in under. So that's going to be a big reveal when that comes out. But great reveal. This is Asuna's opportunity to sort of like return the favor. Kirito was able to save Asuna during the ALO arc, the second arc of Sword Art Online, when she was captive. Now Kirito's in there unable to sort of save himself. Asuna's going in there to try and help him. So big moments probably coming in the next episode. I'm super, super excited, and I was very, very happy with this episode. Both parts of it. Yes, the Asuna reveal was fantastic. Finally, all the teasing has paid off. The perfect introduction for Asuna into the story. But I did also really like the Sheeta stuff. I think I've really liked a lot of the kind of newer character introductions and kind of smaller kind of arcs and character storytelling that they're doing. And I think Sheeta and Iskon's a very good example of that. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.